Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Claire, for that interesting talk. I think we're in a bit of a different place in MoJ to where you are, but I think we're definitely going in the right direction. I wanted to talk a little bit to you all today, I guess, about the changing culture in government. I've been in government, I think, 10, 12 years, something like that. I was just saying to Ruth earlier that I came in to interview at two different government departments when I first started. One was ECGD, where Ruth interviewed me, and the other was Home Office, as it was at the time, where Mike Marriott, sitting in the front row, interviewed me, and I ended up at the Home Office. So there we go. I could have been doing very different things. But I want to talk really a little bit about the changing kind of culture within government, certainly kind of both inside, outside the academic community, and where there's a real appetite for kind of data science, advanced analytics, whatever you want to call it. And I think it's a really exciting time to be working certainly in the MoJ and a lot of other bits of government that I come across and people I talk to. I want to give you a bit of a flavour of the projects we've been doing in MoJ pretty much entirely in the last year, and really kind of getting serious about this journey in the last 6 months. And then at the end, if I talk fast enough and I get to those slides, then I will perhaps give a few kind of reflections about our journey, where we're at, the things that kind of worry me and keep me awake at night, one of which is I wish we had what Claire had in terms of kind of the data infrastructure and architecture in place, because that's the main thing that worries me. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this session. So who are MoJ? We're the Ministry of Justice. You may well know what we do, but very briefly, we employ about 70,000 people across a kind of whole range of services. We've got a budget of kind of £9 billion. We have essentially, I guess, 3 big operational arms. Her Majesty's Prison and Probation Service, and they do exactly what it says on the tin. We've got the Courts and Tribunal Service, which look after criminal justice, family justice, civil admin and tribunals justice. I know quite a lot about criminal justice. Family justice is generally looking after a lot of the decisions there about the future of children. So if the state wants to take, or local authorities need to take children away from families for reasons of safety, that goes into the family courts. If you're going to get divorced and you need to agree what might happen with your children, that goes through the family courts. The tribunal service, for example, deals with immigration and asylum cases and tribunals, so some really serious stuff that kind of underpins kind of people's lives. Legal aid agency have a budget of, I wasn't going to say that because I can never remember what it is. I'll look at Mike and say 1.8 billion, I think it might be, to I guess kind of provide those justice services. And of course we have a HQ that do all the policy around prisons, probation, courts, legal aid, and a whole bunch of kind of corporate functions, I guess, finance, HR, which have to run those services. We're a data science team of 20 plus data scientists. We're lucky enough to have 1 data engineer and 0.5 software developers who work in the team, and there's kind of more to come on that and how they're really adding value into our team. We have the joy, really, and the fun of being able to kind of do projects right across the MoJ's business. I think we've got live projects, at least 2 live projects that kind of cross all those areas. So at the moment, it's great because we can kind of go out and cherry pick the really interesting, kind of relatively easy to deliver projects. So we're having a great time doing that. And we sit within a community of about 250 kind of analysts kind of in MoJ. So that's kind of roughly who we are. MoJ have a stated vision to become a data-driven department, putting analysts, data and evidence at the heart of decision-making. Right. On previous talks, I'm often very cynical about this, but today I'll be really enthusiastic about it, because I can be both cynical and enthusiastic. I think the really good things about this, there is a genuine desire to be transparent and make data and evidence kind of accessible to people kind of beyond analysts. So that's kind of really exciting to me. MoJ have lots of kind of smart people. They don't like CSVs, they don't like Excel, but they're really interested in what data tells them about their business. So that's kind of really interesting. There's a genuine drive there. Yeah, data science, you alluded to it. It's popular at the moment. It's sexy. Everyone wants a data scientist. Sometimes because the senior civil service have been talking to their mates in the private sector and they talk about data science and they think, I definitely want one. Other times because they actually genuinely know kind of what data science and advanced analytics can offer. There's a genuine culture of experimentation. Sorry about the acronym, I keep forgetting to take that out. There's a government digital service, which has been around, 5, 6 years in government. There's lots of things that are frustrating about the government digital services, but what they've genuinely done is kind of change a culture. So introduced agile approaches, so kind of either kind of prototyping, continuous development, start to deliver value early. And I think one of the biggest advantages for us is you're allowed to kind of fail occasionally. And if you start a project and it's not going where you expect, then you just can it and move on to the next one, rather than flogging a dead horse. Better kit, yeah, finally we're allowed to do something that isn't just SAS and Excel, so that's very exciting. For someone who, 10, 12 years ago when I was in academia was allowed to kind of use all sorts of interesting software. So I think it's a real genuine opportunity for people kind of like us, people in the room today. We've got some really smart people in MoJ and in government. We can recruit more, and actually there are people at the top of the office who really want to engage and have us help them kind of make better decisions, I guess, going back to kind of where Ruth started. So what do we in the data science team do? I'll kind of briefly kind of go over this slide. I think in my mind there's kind of 3 or 4 areas. One is business analytics, and that's a lot about visualization tools, interactive dashboards, really helping the citizens, ministers, and officials to kind of drill down into the data and better understand their business. We try to build tools for them, do a bit of support up front, and then kind of hand them over so there's much less overhead on the analysts. And then maybe get into more advanced analytics. When I give you some examples, you can decide whether those genuinely are advanced analytics. Sometimes I say quite facetiously, it's anything more than SAS and Excel, which is kind of true when we're doing other stuff, interesting stuff with kind of text analytics. See if we can work in call centers to turn kind of voice calls into text and do analysis on that. So some interesting work. And then obviously kind of the less glamorous stuff of trying to get the data engineering right, get the data right at the back end, and kind of build, I guess, analytical tools. At the moment, there are 20 of us with MacBooks, and we're just starting or in the early stages of building an analytical platform. It's, I suppose, on the Amazon Cloud Services that allow kind of much more access right across MoJ to people. So that's part of our role to, I suppose, spread capability across the MoJ. So that's kind of where MoJ are. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the projects that we've kind of worked on. So business analytics is kind of really where we as a team kind of started. We did a lot of, I suppose, away days, building kind of tools that people didn't really know we were building, and then having them kind of ready to go and showcase to people when the time came. And the stuff that really kind of got traction was kind of dashboards and business analytics. And I was going to show you briefly one of the first examples of products that we produced. So let's hopefully this works. Here we go. So this was something we did when Michael Gove came in. He was really keen to be kind of more transparent and say much more about kind of performance. And this is one of the tools we did called the Crown Court Performance Tool. You can see here you've got a map of all the kind of the Crown Courts in the country, a kind of basic table of data. Oh, what did I just? Basic table of. See, I should have downloaded it rather than try and drive it over the Wi-Fi, but there we go, I thought I'd risk it. And the idea of this kind of tool is it allows you to drill down and kind of look at what's happening, what the performance is right across the Crown Courts. There's a lot of interest in the Ministry of Justice about kind of getting through, being efficient, getting through lots of kind of business in the courts. So there's a particular figure here around disposal rate. How many cases can you get through in 100 sitting days? And you can see in the Midlands a great disparity between Derby at 169 and Birmingham at 102. But if you know anything about the Crown Courts, you might imagine that allows you that the courts do kind of all sorts of different types of cases. So, for example, if you've got a big fraud or murder case, that's going to take a significant long time. If you've got a relatively minor affray case, that's going to quickly go through the system. So what we do is we allow people to then start to drill down and unpick performance. So in this case, we have, if you just want to compare, which I do, let's say kind of Derby and Birmingham, you just kind of select the particular courts you're interested in, and in the top corner here, you've got a whole bunch of information about those. So you've got the case mix, which says what sort of cases have come through, the hearing time, the number of hearings, and this allows you just to start drilling down and saying, are Birmingham particularly worse at performing, or do they just have a different type of cases? So you can kind of start to unpick, as you can see on here, differences in the number of violence against the person case. Violence against the person, Birmingham have a lot more than Derby. Say, for example, the hearing time. I don't know here. Oh, Birmingham looks significantly longer. Birmingham takes significantly longer pretty much across the board to see their cases than kind of Derby do. And you can start to say, well, actually, there might be a problem here in kind of Birmingham and Derby, and go up and start investigating in those courts. So that can be used either by the public and is actually kind of used internally by the judiciary to start to kind of unpick. what's happening in the justice system. And this stuff has, I don't know, it's been either catnip or a gateway drug to our senior civil servants. They used to just kind of Excel and PowerPoint presentations, so to be able to explore kind of live in meetings and have those kind of discussions about performance, rather than maybe finding a problem, sending an analyst away for 4 weeks and then coming back 4 weeks later, has really kind of changed the way kind of our senior civil servants kind of think about performance. So that's all kind of, that's been a kind of really interesting, I suppose, part of our journey in the way that senior civil servants like to kind of engage with data and are changing kind of the culture and the way they ask questions of the business. So here we go. So back on the slide. So we've got, so there's one of our dashboards. We're also doing, and I won't kind of show this now, but we've done some nice Sankey diagrams of the criminal justice system, just simple ways for people to start to understand the business, how cases flow through the system, and you can say select violence cases, fraud cases, sexual offences cases, and see how those flow differently through the criminal justice system, what different outcomes there are for different types of cases. So there's some interesting ways that we allow people to just to start understanding the justice system a bit more. And then we have a whole range, we've got a whole kind of business and industry and dashboards. So we've got, so there's just a picture of one we're doing with finance, but we do kind of HR and other corporate services, family justice system. So we're really helping MoJ just to start to kind of drill down under the business and start to unpick what's happening performance-wise. Other work we're doing is, I suppose, we're starting to kind of expand into other kind of analytical techniques. You might imagine Ministry of Justice, we've got a whole load of policy people, they produce a large amount of text, they put out lots of consultations, so we're really starting to help the business kind of analyse text. One kind of classic area we do this, as I say, is about consultations and reports. And Sam, who's sitting at the back, will talk a little bit about these projects in our session this afternoon. Sam's done kind of lots and lots of work thinking about kind of complex natural language processing techniques. I think, well, he can speak for himself, but I think a lot of the value kind of we've kind of given to the business at the moment is kind of the simpler end of looking at kind of looking at diagrams, looking at kind of most similar documents, and just starting to give our policy people a way of kind of unpicking the vast reams of kind of documents they have. And we're using this live at the moment to help people, as I say, on consultations. We're going to get a whole bunch of reports back from prisons at the moment to see how the prison reform programme is going and the prison reform plans, and we're again helping policy to kind of machine read those and put new prisons together in kind of interesting ways, because there are surprising links between prisons that you pull out of the text where they're really facing similar problems that we didn't really understand until we started, I suppose, reading or machine reading their business cases. Another thing that we've done, and I'll do a quick demo of that, is a tool to look at parliamentary questions. So I think MoJ gets something like we had, I think, something like 6,000 parliamentary questions in the last Parliament, which was, only about 3 years long. And we don't really have a very structured way of keeping track of those questions, asking those questions. If we get a question in, generally, the way we try and work out if we've ever had that question before is you go and ask someone in the business who might have had that question before, because there's a particular topic and a particular expert. So we've just done some kind of text mining off the parliamentary website and some natural language processing to identify kind of, I guess, most similar parliamentary questions. So if I want to, I normally do something quite contentious on here, so let's do something kind of slightly less contentious. If we have a question about prison books, or you're interested in prison books, because there was a big campaign a few years ago to get more kind of books into prison, and you can see, well, you just type in prison books and you have a whole bunch of information about people who've been asking questions about prison books. You've got some kind of topic keywords, so this is clearly a whole bunch of questions about the campaign to get books into prison libraries. If I scroll down a bit further, there are clearly some very specific questions about Leeds Wakefield, and as I noticed earlier, there was stuff a bit further down, so we've got some topics about English language. So if you can drill into those questions, and actually you find these questions are very much about kind of Welsh language libraries and Welsh language books. So it's a way that helps our customers understand what's gone on with our previous 4,000 or 5,000 questions. And what we also kind of find, I guess, quite useful, which we haven't kind of put the topic modelling on here, but a nice easy way to just kind of, this is just kind of filtering, but to see which kind of MPs, what kind of questions they're asking, what questions MPs are interested in. I haven't done this I won't do this for a new minister, because in fact, we've already done it, and he hadn't asked any justice questions. So, yeah, that's kind of quite an interesting way to just kind of start to understand our customers. So that's kind of text analysis. This slide might be quite familiar. Putting interactive front ends on traditional optimization tools. So it looks kind of very similar. So I think I won't repeat too much of what Claire said, but we've kind of people have been doing linear programming, working out optimizing kind of locations of where you want to put your estate for decades. I guess what we found really powerful and really a way that really engages our customers is being able to put visual front ends on this. Because if you just give customers a list of locations and say this is the best place to put your prisons, they don't really engage very well with that. They say, well, hang on, I know that prison, and I don't know, there's not really, we might want to shut that wing, or there's not really kind of quite the capacity we had there, or there was always some kind of special thing about a prison that you don't really know, you haven't put in your algorithm, and they really don't want to close that prison. So what the interactive front end allows you to do is actually kind of change the solution. So click, say, for example, say, okay, let's change the capacity on that prison, or okay, you want to close that prison in Leeds and open a separate one, or open a separate one in Wakefield. What's the impact going to be on kind of journey time and travel time? And the customers have really engaged with those kind of approaches, and it's meant that we've had a real impact in where we've cited both kind of new resettlement prisons and the youth justice estate in the way that we hadn't before, because previously, again, we come back to the fact that you'll take a solution to a customer and they'll come back to you and say, well, that's all very well and good, but we don't like it for reasons A, B, and C, and it's going to be 2 weeks before you can go back to them often, whereas we can kind of, you can kind of do that live. So both kind of Robin and Carrick have done a lot of work around this kind of mapping, so that'll be kind of part of the demo this afternoon, and Robin has got some free code for you as well. So, and in fact, other government departments have already picked up and started using his code on GitHub. So that's kind of great that code's getting reused in other government departments. How am I doing for time? Okay, I'll go very briefly through this. One of the things that's most exciting to me is this week on Monday, I inherited the team of data scientists from the prison and probation services, and they are the one bit of our business that is actually getting access to live or near live data. So we get data out of the operational systems of an evening, we can do some analysis on it overnight, and essentially push that back out to customers in the prison service, kind of for their morning kind of reports and decisions in the morning. This is it's going live I suppose, we've got access to the data only over the last couple of weeks, or in a sense that we can kind of push that all back out to governors, and they're really kind of excited about this. So there's two particular projects I just wanted to kind of touch on. One is what we tongue-in-cheek called I Predict a Riot, but there are some, I should be serious actually, because violence in prison is very serious business. But this dashboard really helps governors. It does a number of things. One, it tells them about who the prisoners are in their estate. Now, we move prisoners around kind of quite frequently, so prison governors can, on the morning someone arrives, or when they're getting new prisoners, they can see who their new prisoners are, and we give them basically a score or an assessment of their potential risk of violence. Before this kind of tool, that kind of information might catch up with the prisoner kind of 2 or 3 weeks later. So that's making a real difference to governors, and we're also doing kind of behind the scenes some kind of statistics to see. It wouldn't surprise you to know that there is a background level of violence in prisons, but we're also providing some intel to the governors to see whether actually that background level of violence is rising in a way that might lead to some kind of major instability in the prisons. Some other really interesting stuff, I've gone one too far. The other interesting stuff we're doing, with a deliberately obscured picture, is starting to pull out kind of networks of gangs in prisons. And again, say for example, we're able to look at the live case notes and see, well, X fought Y, or X was talking to Y in the dinner queue, or X and Y kind of share cells, and then start to kind of build those networks. This is a prototype at the moment. Basically, there are intelligence officers in prisons who get a big sheet of A3, A2 paper and are drawing those networks kind of by hand from the intelligence and talking to people. So we're starting to be able to kind of do that information, go through hundreds of thousands of kind of incidents that are happening, not just kind of in one prison, but right across the estate as people move around, and start to be able to give insight to those intelligence officers working in prison. So I suppose kind of doing the heavy lifting for them, I guess, so that they're just not spending their whole time trawling through kind of large amounts of data. They're actually trying to think about how they can break up those networks and what that means. So, we've done lots of stuff. Are we starting to have an impact over the last kind of 6 months? People are using the tool. So one of our public tools has had 15,000 plus views, and the senior judiciary, from initially being very risk averse and not being keen on it, are asking us to put more and more stuff in. So they must be using they must be using it. We're changing, as I touched on, we're changing the way HQ people interact with data to understand the business. We're changing the way operational people kind of interact with analysts. Operational people have always liked analysts, but they grumble a bit about the fact it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get that information back to them. When we can do it overnight, they love us even more. So that's kind of really exciting. And we're changing the culture of, I guess, decision-making at kind of senior level. As I touched on earlier, when senior people actually like engaging with the conversations and drilling down into the data. Occasionally, you can go down rabbit holes. You need to think very carefully about how you're going to present that data. But you can actually get a real interesting kind of conversation going at a senior level. I want to touch briefly on my reflections. I know Ruth's standing there, but I can probably about 2 more minutes. Touch briefly on kind of my reflections of our kind of journey. I suppose I've touched on it. Build capability and portfolio. In our team, we didn't have this remit. We brought in our personal laptops. We ran kind of innovation days. We ran it on public data, not sensitive data. We built some prototypes, showcase that to people around the business. Someone somewhere will like what you're doing and become a champion for you. You might find them the first time you come across someone. You might take a long, long time. We had a lucky opportunity. Michael Gove, when he came in, for good or ill, he loved transparency. So we had a tool that was ready for him to kind of, that we could say, okay, yeah, we can do that for you. It got us some MacBooks, it got us some Tableau licenses, and it got us a chance to build prototypes of other projects on sensitive data, which kind of, I suppose, really helped us, again, to continue showcasing. Yeah, get smart people, train smart people. There aren't many unicorns. I might have 1 or 2 in the team, I don't know, but a couple of experts and a bunch of other smart people, and a culture where people are encouraged to kind of innovate, question, and learn new skills actually does go a really long way. And for us, one of the fundamentally important things was getting those people together so they could learn from each other. Get lucky again with the Secretary of State. Our next Secretary of State was really keen with advanced analytics, so that was great. So a number of the I suppose the prototypes and the tools and the innovation things which we developed kind of low key suddenly went right up the agenda in the Ministry of Justice because the Secretary of State really loved it. So we took the opportunity to get together a very senior governance board to kind of commission our work, and it gave us real access to the key decision makers in the department. At the moment, I think we're in recruit and consolidate, because I think the last point on there was flog the team to deliver early successes. So I've hopefully stopped flogging the team quite so much, and we're working at a more sustainable pace, getting out into the business, trying to find kind of projects and continue to explore new techniques. And I suppose the last thing I'm doing is worrying. Our approach has been to build products and raise our profile. We haven't got a kind of great data infrastructure sitting behind us. We're kind of doing it, we're kind of doing it as we go on the fly. So I guess we need to sort that before our quick wins dries up. Yeah, where next? Access to live data. We've got some access to live data. It's been a game changer just getting access to the prison database. So we're really pushing hard on that. Working with academics and other experts. We've got some smart people. There's a lot more smart people outside MoJ we could be working with. And a couple of kind of internal things about thinking about professionalizing our approach to product development. So starting to work with software developers who are way better than analysts at kind of building and professionalizing kind of apps and the sort of things you want to get in front of your customers. And finally, I guess we need to spread the capability more widely because there's 20 of us, but there's 200 plus analysts, a lot of whom could be doing this work. And I will finish there.
Thank you.